It is with one goal in mind. We have to build a resilient Caribbean community. To do so necessitates
begins its meeting of heads of government, addressing the need of a stronger integration.
To build a resilient Caribbean community.
An explosion on a public bus in Colombia kills 7 people. And Ashraf Ghani toasts election results in Afghanistan as the opposition cries foul. Hello, welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez in Quito, and this is from the South. The 31st intersessional meeting of CARICOM began on Tuesday and will address a regional approach to current challenges. Representatives of the 15-member countries are expected to deliberate on policies regarding security, climate change, tourism and commerce. They will also discuss the implementation of the CARICOM single market and economy and a regional approach to the coronavirus. The meeting is set to end on Wednesday. And CARICOM's Secretary General began the session by addressing the issues at hand for the region.
The scope of our agenda illustrates the breadth of issues which we as a community must address to further consolidate our integration and to position ourselves advantageously in an increasingly complex and challenging global arena. Whether it is the imperative of making significant progress with the single market and economy, securing our financial sector, safeguarding our fiscal sovereignty, enhancing our technological capability and capacity, protecting the health and security of our people, expanding our foreign outreach, it is with one goal in mind. We have to build a resilient Caribbean community. The discussions over the next 2 days come against a background of global uncertainty, including the increasing threats to multilateralism, the spread of tensions and volatility arising from unresolved conflicts, and the acceleration of the devastating effects of climate change. These issues demand that we act collectively to overcome the hurdles that confront us. We face an increasingly hostile international environment which demands more than ever that we come together to secure and promote our interests as a community. I thank you.
Lauding the success of the integration movement, Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley urged the heads of government to take courage and act in the interest of the Caribbean's future against outside interests.
I hope and pray, particularly in the presence of these young people for whom we act today, but who will act for us tomorrow, that we take courage and recognize that it is in the interest of those who are not of this community to advance their own individual causes. The only people capable of defending our causes and our future and our development is us ourselves. We may not do it overnight. We may not do it in a year. We may not even do it in a decade. But if we recognize that this integration movement is one of the most successful integration movements that was established in the 20th century, we then better appreciate the responsibility that we have to care it, to nurture it, and not to allow for any kind of political or diplomatic embolism to threaten its existence. I trust and pray that we come to this moment, therefore, conscious that as family, nothing can separate us and no one shall get in between us. It is against this background that we therefore recognize that it is principles that shall guide us always. And if we are faithful to those principles, then we shall always find a way home. Principles may be inconvenient, but they guarantee our protection and our integrity. That we stand here because those who fought in the 1930s and those who created the political institutions that flowed therefrom understood that without unity they could achieve nothing. But with unity they could turn back the mighty hands of global empires who sought to suppress people for centuries.
The Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Alan Chastanet, noted the challenges existed while he was at the helm. This includes what he called an undemocratic EU blacklisting, de-risking, and the issues within both Haiti and Venezuela. PM Chastanet went on to slam external interference in Venezuela's internal affairs.
The lack of resolution to the ongoing situation in Venezuela continues to concern us. So far, all efforts at mediation have failed. In fact, from all indications, conditions in Venezuela continue to deteriorate despite a recent lull, and this is likely to make finding a solution even harder. The involvement of outside forces in the controversy, however, could only escalate the crisis and make a resolution that more difficult, while at the same time testing and stressing our own attempt at a common position on that issue.
Canada's foreign minister arrived on Monday, meeting with Prime Minister Mia Mottley and CARICOM Secretary General Ilwin Larocque. Foreign Minister François-Philippe Champagne is attending today's meetings as PM Justin Trudeau's intended trip was cancelled amid nationwide blockades on Canada's railway system. It is held by Indigenous people and allies against a planned pipeline project in the west of the country. Trudeau was expected to fly to Barbados on Monday to speak at the two-day meeting, where he intended to advocate for a seat at the UN Security Council. And in Canada's largest city, Toronto, families celebrated the statutory holiday Family Day with solidarity actions calling for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to leave Wet'suwet'en territory. Hundreds of marchers took their demands for respect for the Indigenous territory to the Queen's Park Provincial Parliament. Similar demonstrations and round dances were held around the country as blockades of key railways continue. And ahead of the CARICOM conference, Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister signed a unitization agreement with his Barbadian counterpart. The deal will allow the exploration of hydrocarbon resources between both countries. Dr. Keith Rowley lamented that his country was prevented from executing a similar agreement with Venezuela due to illegal blockades.
We have been working on a unitization of Venezuela for almost 20 years after we have discovered the Loran Manatee and other fields on our southern border. And we have been working on this for almost 20 years. And then recently, Venezuela got itself sanctioned by the United States, and that puts an end to that, because after 20 years, the Venezuelans cannot now move in the way that we were hoping from the first day we started out. So we have just got agreement with Venezuela, which is very significant for Trinidad and Tobago, saying, we agree that you can go ahead and exploit on your side, and we will do on our side. But that's a very unusual development, and it usually takes good cooperation between countries.
Bahamas Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis provided an update on his country's recovery following last year's devastating Hurricane Dorian. He was speaking to the Bahamian diaspora on the sidelines of the CARICOM conference in Barbados.
But the country is growing, the country is developing, investment is flourishing. There'll be great, lots of job opportunities. Exuma is bursting at the seams in terms of employment, development, etc. And therefore we're constructing a new airport in Exuma. Lutra is undergoing the same changes, and therefore we're constructing a new airport at Lutra, making the changes for not only guests but staff.
After this break, a dengue outbreak creates a national health emergency in Paraguay. More details when we come back.
Infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. More stories at this hour. Political parties in the Dominican Republic are rejecting the announcement by electoral authorities to hold a do-over for the municipal elections on March 15, after suspending them on Sunday. Our correspondent, Daisy Toussaint, has more.
Following the suspension of the municipal elections on Sunday, there is now a political crisis. There is tension in the country, with constant protests rejecting the decision. 2 people were killed and 11 were injured during these protests. President Danilo Medina spoke to Dominicans and said that he regretted the circumstances which led to the decision to suspend the elections, which left millions of citizens without the opportunity to vote. He called on political parties to remain calm and be responsible. Meanwhile, the Electoral Observatory, with members of several countries in Latin America, said it was concerned about the crisis. It said that the failure of the automated voting system generates numerous doubts. Several organizations have held vigils in the country and abroad against the situation. Now opposition parties say that they weren't consulted on the new date for the elections to be held on March 15th and under the manual voting system.
That was Daisy Toussaint from Santo Domingo. Haiti's police officers have continued with their protests, demanding better working conditions and the right to form unions. On Monday, they marched through the streets of the capital, Port-au-Prince, to express their anger at the government's unwillingness to address their concerns. They have since threatened to boycott next week's carnival festivities if their demands are not met. Haiti has in the past months been rocked by protests calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Jovenel Moïse, who has been implicated in several corruption scandals. We now bring you the first installment in a new series of reports, 1 year after the attempt by the Venezuelan opposition to enter supposed humanitarian aid, to understand the context and the attempts to overthrow a government.
The date was January 5th, 2019. The legislative year has just begun in Venezuela, and expectations were high among lawmakers.
In peace, in a healthy peace, all in peace.
But peace wasn't necessarily what they wanted for Venezuela.
We urge Nicolás Maduro to not take office as president and respect the Assembly's role and transfer provisional power to this body until new elections take place.
The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela is perplexed by these extravagant declarations by a group of countries of the American continent. After receiving orders from the U.S. government through a video conference, they have decided to support a coup in Venezuela.
And that was the first part of Washington's aggression. Juan Guaidó was chosen by the White House to be the poster child of their plan once he became the president of the National Assembly.
After the legislative session, we formally speak to the media.
We have to call Juan Guaidó a U.S. marketing phenomenon. He was created. They considered all his aspects, like his youth or the color of his skin.
The marketing phenomenon started with the script of his speech when taking his oath as president of the National Assembly. That speech set the agenda, the narrative, and the actions that followed.
We reaffirm the illegitimacy of Nicolás Maduro Moros for not carrying out an election on May 20.
These facts lead us back to 2018. This sector of the opposition, now led by Juan Guaidó, does not recognize Nicolás Maduro and speaks of stealing the presidency. Ironically, they demanded, through violent actions known as guarimbas, to move forward with the elections in 2017.
We want an open review of the election schedule in Venezuela and to move forward with the presidential elections.
But this radical sector of the opposition did not participate in the presidential election and called for a boycott.
We won't participate in this electoral fraud, and we will leave them alone with this election. We will leave the street desolated.
But another group from the opposition, cast aside by their own people, did participate in the presidential elections by signing an agreement to set up a dialogue, while 4 political parties from the opposition rejected it.
But the essential is there, an agreement on the electoral dates, electoral guarantees, and the electoral observation missions.
Part of the opposition is now participating in a dialogue, distancing themselves from violent strategies and calls for a military invasion. They say their main mistakes were calling for an abstention, refusing to accept that presidential elections did take place, and declaring that there is no legitimate president.
For me, it was never explained what really happened on May 20, 2018. They took it on Maduro, and that's the biggest contradictions. The worst part is that the international community supported it.
On January 10, 2019, with the recognition of more than 90 countries, Nicolás Maduro took office as president for a second term.
I will fulfill all the mandate of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
The sun in Venezuela rises from the Essequibo, always loyal, never becoming traitors.
At the same time, the attacks of the United States turned towards the military in an attempt to break up their unity and loyalty.
Soldier of our homeland Venezuela, I'm giving you an order.
The media, the accomplices, showed this as a sign of power.
The U.S. government was fooled. It was manipulated by the offers of those who want to take power by force. By going against the Constitution, they claimed the military was on their side, which was a lie.
The opposition created an amnesty law to try convincing the military to support the coup, but they weren't successful. On our next report, we will recall the story of the false humanitarian aid at the Colombian border.
Madeline Garcia, Telesur, Caracas, Venezuela.
In other news, an explosion on a public bus on a major highway in Colombia has killed 7 people and left another 11 with serious injuries. The incident happened in Rosa, a town in the northwestern province of Cauca. Local media reports suggest that the explosion was caused by a bomb on the bus. A senior military official said authorities are investigating the incident. Identification of the deceased is underway, while the injured have been taken to a local hospital for medical attention.
At this time, there are 7 dead, 11 injured, of whom 4 were referred to the El Bordo hospital. This in turn referred to the Level 2 hospital in Popayán.
The authorities are at the point of verifying the reason why a moving vehicle explodes, and they are taking all measures and all the necessary tests to be able to say what really happened.
The Paraguayan Congress has declared a national health emergency over the dengue fever outbreak. The declaration will grant extraordinary powers to the government to quickly release emergency funds to combat the epidemic. The health emergency will last 90 days. Paraguay has so far recorded 6 deaths and over 4,250 confirmed dengue cases across the country.
According to experts, dengue eradication can take up to 100 years. But even if they exaggerate, we are going to assume that it will take at least 20 years. We are talking about 20 years. The country has to be ready for the next 20 years. It can be that people die for dengue every year. Right now, we are experiencing another very serious epidemic.
Coming up, South Africa rugby champions win the Team of the Year award. So stay with us.
Discover the cultural diversity that defines a continent. The place where art and tradition are part of the same nucleus. Artistic expressions, values, live. Fridays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. More news at this hour. The wife of Lesotho's Prime Minister Thomas Thabane, Maisha Thabane, returned to court on Tuesday to face charges of murdering his previous wife. Maisha, who is currently on bail, is accused of hiring 8 assassins to murder her husband's estranged wife, Dipulelo Thabane. Dipulelo was shot dead outside her home in 2017, 2 days before Tom Thabane was inaugurated as Prime Minister. The court has set March 17th as the date for the commencement of the trial.
Your case is still under investigation and is still awaiting direction from the Attorney General with regard to your co-accused being charged. Your case will be heard next on 17 March 2020.
South Africa's Presidential Affairs Minister Jackson Mthembu has described the disruption of President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address last week as disrespectful. Mthembu said the conduct of the economic freedom fighters, members of parliament, demonstrates their disdain for parliament and the people of South Africa. Those MPs last Thursday forced Ramaphosa to momentarily abandon his address in protest against the presence of apartheid-era President Frederick de Klerk, who they say is an unrepentant apartheid murderer.
In his characterization of the EFF's behavior in this House as anti-democratic, totally unacceptable, and actually reprehensible. The EFF's behavior is uncouth, disrespectful, and demonstrates the disdain they have for this august House and the people of South Africa. I wonder why they get voted into this House.
However, the leader of the EFF, Julius Malema, has rebuffed the minister's accusations and said there was nothing wrong with his members' behavior. He has also accused African National Congress leaders of not confronting de Klerk because they fear he will expose some of them as spies who worked for the apartheid government.
There is absolutely nothing that de Klerk does in terms of nation building. Many of you are scared to confront this question because de Klerk has got your false numbers. You were spies and you are scared that when you take de Klerk head on, your file of being spies will be released and you will be exposed for who you are, that you are not actually revolutionaries, you are impimpies who are on the payroll of de Klerk and the apartheid regime.
In sports, 2019 World Cup rugby champions South Africa won the Team of the Year award at the prestigious Laureus World Sports Awards ceremony held in Berlin, Germany on Monday. The Springboks emerged top in the vote, which included UEFA Champions League winners Liverpool, Spain's men's basketball team, Women's World Cup winners the United States, and NBA champions Toronto Raptors. They won the Rugby World Cup for a third time when they defeated England in the final in Yokohama, Japan in November 2019. The victory saw team captain Siya Kolisi become the first black captain to lift the Webb Ellis Trophy.
And yeah, we've really enjoyed every single part of it. And one thing that I'll never forget what Coach Rachi said, it's really a privilege to play rugby in South Africa because you get to impact people's lives who don't play rugby, and it can bring a country together like we've seen in the past couple of weeks.
Afghanistan's election commission says Ashraf Ghani has won a second term as president with 50.64% of the vote. The commission declared Ghani winner of the elections nearly 5 months after voting took place. In second place was businessman Abdullah, who received 39.52% of the vote. Former senior Taliban official Gulbuddin Hekmatyar came out third with 3.85%. Abdullah and Hekmatyar previously said they would not accept the results due to what they say is illegal behavior by the Electoral Commission.
The Election Commission, in accordance to Article 61 of the Constitution, declares Mr. Ashraf Ghani, who has won 923,592 votes, equal to 50.64% of the votes, as the elected president of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan.
And with that, we end our news brief, but you can find all of our stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to also join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
The toughest sanctions ever imposed by us on a country.
The aim, ask the United States what the aim is.
Discover the cultural diversity that defines a continent. The place where art and tradition are part of the same nucleus. Artistic expressions, values, passion, and more. Real life. Fridays, only on Telesur.